everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to run you through my May wrap-up. I read 7 books in May. My numbers are increasing, which is nice. So I'm just going to jump right in because I have a lot to talk about and not a lot of time to do it. So let's go. The first book I completed in May was Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Grishaverse series. Everyone knows Shadow and Bone is the first book, and so I read that just before the show came out and then jumped straight into this one. Siege and Storm continues the story of Alina and how she is kind of learning about her powers of being the Sun Summoner and then the ongoing conflict that arose in the first book. I won't say too much about this, mostly because spoilers, but I will say pacing was definitely better in this book. I didn't love the pacing in the first book or the description of the world. I felt a bit jarred. Watching the show definitely did help with that. I kind of understood a bit more and I was a bit more tolerant towards the story, but that's just generally my thoughts on Siege and Storm, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed was an audiobook, and it was The Red Queen by Isabel Carmody. This is the conclusion to my recent re-listen of the Obernoon series. This is book 7. I had read every other book in the series already, and it was a reread for those, but this one I haven't actually read before. So this was my first time reading The Red Queen, and I loved it. It was so good. There was like so many different genre shifts. We got a lot of answers about a lot of the questions that had arisen from like the previous books before it. It started off in a way that I just did not expect, like at all. I did not expect the story to go the way that it did. As I said, there was lots of genre shifts in this book. It really went above and beyond in terms of its uniqueness, and the shifts weren't jarring, which I found really nice. It was quite a nice natural flow between those events that happened. I've explained the plot of the Obernoon series several times on my channel, but basically it is a fantasy / dystopian series that follows a group of people called misfits as they try to battle and make themselves accepted within the world, because they're kind of an oppressed group of people. And then we also follow a main character who's on this quest to stop another giant catastrophe from happening. So as I said, this is the final book. The only downside and the disappointing part of this book was the ending. I found it so confusing and so dissatisfying, and I feel like we just needed another like 3 chapters of the book to properly finalize what actually happened at the end of this book. I did read or / listen to like a novella, but it didn't answer any more of my questions really. But all in all, I think that this was a very good, aside from the end, a very good final book of a very long, very rich, very in-depth fantasy series. So The Red Queen, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Oh, my hands are so cold. The next book I completed was A Beautifully Foolish Endeavour by Hank Green. This is the second book in the Carl's duology. This story obviously continues the events that happened at the end of the last book as well, which was an absolutely remarkable thing. This series is a really fantastic urban sci-fi, is kind of the best way that I can properly describe it, following a group of people specifically who are kind of in the limelight for these Carls that appeared, which are just giant robots from space, and they just appeared one day. Realistically, with this book and this series, I'm learning that it wasn't the story that I was there for. Not at all. The thing that kept me going in this book is the fact that it really read like a Vlogbrothers video, and there was a lot of information in it. It was kind of like trying to bring up different topics and conflicts and stuff that are really present in current society. It addresses these problems and concerns in such a easy to understand and basic raw form way that was just so good. I just loved it. It was amazing. From cryptocurrencies to understanding how big numbers actually are. So educational. I loved it. I found myself thinking about these topics and things like for at least a week after I'd finished reading the book. So it's definitely a book that gets you thinking about things and about the current world that we're living in. The writing was amazing. I love how Hank Green uses really dialogue heavy writing, but also with the ability to maintain the world and to understand the context of the world that we're in. And I think that every word was so purposefully and profoundly utilized in this book. It was just so compact, but so good. I cannot talk highly enough about this series. Yeah, it is honest. It's one of those series that just takes you by surprise. Like, I did not expect to like it as much as I did. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book is an audiobook that I completed, and it is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This is a reread for me. Cinder is a fairy tale retelling, obviously Cinderella, the shoe and all. It follows our main character Cinder, who is a mechanic. She's also a cyborg in this world that's kind of like set in the future. It's like more technologically advanced. There's obviously cyborgs, and it follows her as she, gets invited to a ball, and she works as a mechanic for her stepmother and 2 sisters who really look down on her and exploit her for all that she's worth. And this is the first book in a series of retellings where all of the characters are kind of based on retellings. As I said, reread for me. I didn't love it the first time around when I read it, and I'm not sure why, but I actually really enjoyed it a lot more the second time around. I think that listening to it and having it be that retelling blends really well. It lends itself really well to an audiobook. So that's what I really enjoyed about this. The characters are quite well developed. There's quite a lot of humor, which I enjoy. I haven't had a lot of like humorous character books or like humorous characters within a serious story context in a while. So that is something I didn't realize that I'd been missing until I came back to this book. And this book, obviously, it's the first one. It's quite introductory, but it sets up the world very well, and it sets it up for a lot of mystery. We've been given a lot of questions that we don't have really any answers to. Bit of a cliffhanger at the end, which is good. But this is kicking off my reread of the series, or my continuing of the series, because this is the only one that I read. And the last thing that I want to say about it is the balance of retelling, but also uniqueness, is very good in this book. It stands quite well on its own without the retelling aspect of it. It's just like another added embellishment of the story, which is just kind of cool. So yeah, Cinder. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed was an audiobook, and it was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. Again, another book that I bought when it came out and never read it, and have recently listened to it on audiobook, because that's how we get through most books on this channel these days. Caraval is a, whoops, that is a bookmark. It is a whimsical, circus-based kind of mystery challenge story. This book follows our 2 main characters, Scarlett and Teller, as they escape their kind of controlling, abusive father and run away to this circus game, which runs over I think it's 5 days, and all of the participants in this game have to complete quests and find the next clues to get to the end story. This is a book that is filled with magic and mystery and love and angst. I did not expect to like this book as much as I actually did, to the point now where I'm like, I really want to continue to read it. I didn't intend to do that in the first place. I was immediately in this book for the romance and the tension. We love a good romance plot within a story. There was a lot of mystery in this book, and that's kind of what kept me going. With the mystery and the pacing of such a short period of time over the book, it was done very well. As well, to keep the story going, we had the mystery, but we also had the elusiveness of all of the other characters. You weren't really sure who was telling you the truth, and our main character, who we were reading from, like it was her perspective, she was also very confused, and she didn't know too much about the world. So uncovering the story and everything, as she usually does, was very interesting, and it kept me motivated to keep going through the books. Another book that I did not expect to like as much as I did, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm super out of order, like I've missed books left, right and center. But the next book that I completed a couple of books ago, actually, to be honest, it is an audiobook, and it's The Dark Road by Isabel Carmody. As I said before, this is kind of like a little companion novella. It was only about half an hour, so I'm not like really counting it as a book that I read this month. But it's a story I consumed. It actually follows a couple of the before timers from the series, so it's set super far in the past, and it's there to kind of just answer some questions that we had from the Red Queen that never actually got answered, which, to be completely honest with you, I had forgotten about and wasn't even like registering in my brain until I listened to The Dark Road, and it was actually quite good. I don't think I needed to listen to it. You definitely don't need to listen to it to like have the full experience of the story, but it was just kind of nice, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The last book that I completed in May was The Elephant Vanishes by Haruki Murakami. This is one of his short story collections. There's about 15 or so stories in this small book. The theme of these books is that it's kind of like alternate realities. Like it's just kind of like weird and quirky things that are happening that you wouldn't usually find happening in our normal life, but they were still set within our world, and it felt very like real and just quite normal, which was quite bizarre, like having these odd, bizarre events and themes happening within these stories that were set in a world that we just live in. Like it was hard to explain. I feel like that's something that Haruki Murakami does very well, is blending that bizarre into our normal life. So the way that I actually read this is that I just had it on my bedside table and I read a short story every night before I went to bed, which was really nice because it was kind of almost reminiscent of like someone reading to me before I went to bed, just like a little story. So that I really liked. Overall, it was quite nice to read. I think Haruki Murakami has a very interesting style of writing, and I genuinely don't know how to describe it. Also taking into consideration that this is translated from Japanese originally. I probably won't read it all over again, but I might go back every now and then for a couple of stories here and there. And my two favorite ones were The Little Green Monster and Sleep. Yeah, Haruki Murakami. This is my first book of his, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Anyway, guys, that is all the books that I read in May. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if there's any books that you've read in May, or if you've read any of these or your thoughts about them. Just come and have a chat. I like chatting to people about these things. That's why I'm here. But yes, thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you guys next time.